Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. Not all of us watch TV each night or listen to the radio each morning or pick up a newspaper, but 82% of Australians leave home every day for work, for the shops, for the school run. It goes part of the way towards explaining why outdoor advertising is such a big business in Australia. And it's everywhere. Billboards on highways, posters at bus stops, digital screens in shopping centres, even ads on the sides of buildings. It's all part of the outdoor advertising ecosystem and a powerful way for business to reach consumers in their everyday environments. The Outdoor Media Association, or OMA, is the peak national industry body representing most of Australia's outdoor media display companies. Elizabeth McIntyre is the chief executive of the OMA. Elizabeth, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
How big is the industry, Elizabeth? What are we talking about?
Oh, it's a $1.2 billion industry. And as you've mentioned, because you can't unsubscribe and we're unmissable, it's growing all the time. And I think we're probably going to be the last broadcast medium. And it's a medium that we take very, very seriously. And I think that's the reason for most of the growth. You mentioned sort of all the different varieties of outdoor and out of home, but I'm sure people probably aren't even aware it includes petrol convenience, cafes, gymnasiums, all of those and airports are all included in sort of our out of home and outdoor journeys every day.
Okay, so tell me, compared to, we'd read horror stories about free-to-air, and I, having been in newspapers for many years, know those stories very well. I mean, audio, in a sense, is okay, though I'm not so sure about radio. Why is outdoor doing better relative to those guys?
Look, I think people are realising the value of outdoor and out of home and the many different formats that the medium comes in. I think a lot of people think that they know out of home and they sort of do refer, as you have done to yourself, to billboards and, buses and transit and trains and things like that. But it really is at so many different touch points now of people's journeys, whether it's to work or just out of home. And we are really at all of those different touch points. And I think what it is allowing brands and advertisers to do is to be able to use a lot of those different formats along the way to not only, I guess, tell a story. Some people don't like that phrase, but it also allows different formats to go into deeper depths of what the brand is trying to convey.
Okay, so just explain that, because when I see an outdoor advertisement, except when I'm putting petrol into my car, so I'm watching something, I get that. But if I'm driving on a freeway and I look up and there's a branded advertisement or something or other, I'm only seeing it very briefly, aren't I?
Well, you sure are, but your brain is obviously capturing that information. And then what might happen is you might see that on a freeway, and then you might be on that same freeway behind a bus that might sort of on a bus back capture another message. And then you might go into a petrol convenience or something, or a shopping centre. And all along the way, you're getting that brand reinforced and that message around that particular item reinforced and in a different way. But what that does from a sort of a neuro impact factor is increase that recognition in your brain every single time. So it's having that impact that you can't ignore.
Okay. Digitisation seems to have, I know little about this area, Elizabeth, so bear with me, but certainly digitisation seems to have been a bit of a boon for outdoor.
Yes, and I guess if we look at sort of what digital has done to, I guess, our revenue over the last decade is increase it from, say, 70% to now sort of 74% in 2023. But I think there's two aspects of digitisation. One is obviously the investment that our members have undergone for the industry, which is all the digital signs that you're seeing and all of that, the asset ownership of that. And it allows obviously more ads to circle through. But then there's another aspect as well, which is around programmatic. And what that allows advertisers and brands to do is to drop their ads at a certain program when they're going to drop their ads. So, for example, we've had some really sophisticated campaigns around temperature. So when temperature in certain areas, is over 30 degrees, they can advertise ice creams or hoses or things like that. But also in the mornings, for example, in the mornings, maybe everyone's more, keen to find out where their nearest coffee brand is going to be selling. And so, that you can have that sort of morning versus afternoon advertising schedule, and it's a lot more targeted to that particular demographic.
Stay with me, Elizabeth. We'll be back in a minute. I'm speaking to Outdoor Media Association CEO, Elizabeth McIntyre. How do I know whether it works? This is a totally leading question because I know you're soon introducing a new audience measurement system, Move. Tell me about that and how you can measure audience for outdoor.
Well, look, measuring for outdoor has been complicated in the past because it is a complicated medium. Whilst it's very simple to absorb, as you've seen, it comes in so many different formats, from classic, which we sort of call static, to your digital, to, as I already mentioned, all the different formats from retail through to bus backs and transit and everything else. Yep. So it's been different to find a common ground in which we can sort of measure that as a standardization across the industry. So that's made it difficult in the past. But we know, and we're about to launch Move, which has really sort of looked at calibrating a whole lot of separate data points. And it's probably it will be the most sophisticated and advanced software in the world for measuring outdoor and out of home, which we're really excited about. But to answer your first part of that question is, how do you know it works? Well, we know it works because we've done various brand studies around the presence that brands have. And even with other mediums that you've mentioned, they need to advertise on out of home and outdoor to ensure that they get the traffics, whether that be to their websites, to their television stations, or to their radios. We know that out of home and outdoor partners so well with other mediums. And that's what really builds the traffic as well as the brand.
Okay, I'm just going to go back to Move there. So how are you going to do that? I mean, as much as you can say.
So, look, what we've done, and Move has been in development now for nearly 4 years. And what it really has taken into account is taken a lot of first census data. We synthesised our population where we actually tracked 4,000 people with their permission. Then we overlaid that with movement logistics, VLC, how people travel. And we've sort of had all of this data that's come together. And what it will be able to do is measure advertising signs, which we now have over 130,000 signs in regional areas and place-based locations, which haven't been measured before. And really, in terms of granular data, this is going to be able to tell advertisers and brands to be able to target, for example, who is on a train station, platform 3 at Wynyard at 7:30 in the morning, what their spend is, where they're going, what their affiliation to certain activities is. And we know that this is going to work because it's going to allow that data granularity without being invasive. And we're going to be the only medium that's able to do that.
Okay. Where's that put us on the world stage? I mean, it sounds great. Is this kind of something that we're adopting from elsewhere?
We're not. This would be one of the biggest software develops in terms of measuring out of home, and it will be a first and an absolute gold standard for the world in what we introduce. What's important, though, is that you do have other regions in the world, particularly in Southeast Asia, where the numbers are there and the advertising revenue is there, but they're not necessarily moving it. So I think there's an important distinction between, I guess, revenue on a global scale and then how we measure that. And in some regions, as you can appreciate, the measurement isn't necessarily as important as the advertising revenue.
Okay, so where to for outdoor from here? You've got this great new tool. You said that you were confident earlier on. You were saying you're confident that it will outlast other broadcast methods. What do you think is in store for the next 5 years or so?
Look, I think for the medium, it's really around, we take the responsibility very seriously. I've been a broadcast medium. There's a lot of things that we do to self-regulate. I'm not sure whether the audience is aware, but we do not advertise any sort of fatty or high sugary foods 150 metres from any school in Australia venue. And that's the sort of advantage that our measurement system is able to give us. We can sort of draw those fences around those areas. So I think for us, it is really around capitalising on been the broadcast medium, ensuring that people are now able to, I guess, link the fact that there's a presence that wasn't necessarily been able to measure, because in the past and currently we just measure capital cities. So Move will be able to now bring into the regional element, as well as a lot more seasonal data. And as I've mentioned before, this granular data. So for us, we see it as a really big opportunity to grow. But also, I guess, for the general public, it's something that is not invasive. And as I've mentioned before, we take our role in the built environment very, very seriously. We believe that we add to that atmosphere and creativity, and we certainly want to amplify that going forward.
Elizabeth, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Elizabeth McIntyre, Chief Executive of the Outdoor Media Association. This is the Fear and Greed Business Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.